You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, we're going to get started for Town of Branford Board of Finance regular meeting for October 30th, 2023. And first on the agenda is to approve minutes of the August 28th, 2023 meeting.
I've reviewed the minutes, Joe, and I'll approve the minutes. I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes. Oh, and I may point out that our board member, Pam DeLeese, is not able to attend. She is attending via phone and will listen and vote as appropriate. Right, Pam?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Number 2 on the agenda is citizens communication. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to comment briefly on the agenda items, they're welcome to do that. And with no takers, I'll move on to item number 3, is to hear an update from the finance director on changes related to the pension and investment advisors. And in consult with Jim and Selectman Cosgrove, a few weeks ago, we were advised that there's a change in personnel at the Andrew Hightower Group. And so after consultation, we've decided to recommend that we use GYL, who is the co-advisors for the town, and Jim can provide a little more information on that. Jim?
Sure. Thank you, Joe. I think in looking at this, I think one has to kind of look at the history of the relationships and where the town has gone. On or about 2000, the town of Branford had an investment manager, someone making the investments, and the Board of Finance, which would basically have updates like we're going to hear tonight. One of the things that we adopted around 2000 was to change that model more in line with what would be considered a best practice by say, GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, and that is to have independent investment independent investment advisors to basically evaluate the managers. And so when we did that, we hired 2 folks who are then working for Prudential Securities. Over the years, those folks have worked for different firms, and their teams have made presentations here to the Board of Finance. As Joe pointed out, in mid-September, we received notice that 2 of the individuals that you would normally see here tonight were no longer part of the group, and the group was going to be absorbed into another group. And so part of our arrangement with the town is when we initially contracted with this firm, it was with the provision that those would be the folks that were working on our account. So seeing that there was no way to restore that relationship, as Joe pointed out, myself and the first selectman decided that it was in the town's best interest to basically sever that relationship, recognizing that there was no way that we could create the original relationship. Either way, there was going to be a change because we would have been assigned new people to our account. And so that's why later tonight, you will just see GYL making the presentation. Now, one of the benefits of that is we achieved some economies of scale, whereas the fees were basically between the 2 groups were 25 basis points total, 12.5 for each group. Under this arrangement, it'll be 15 basis points for just one group. So you could see just on that arrangement alone, the town of Branford is saving 10 basis points in terms of fees. So the fees were dramatically reduced. We feel that we're in good hands with GYL. We've used them for a number of years. Had it not been for the unique arrangement Branford had, where our team players or on different, flew under different flags, we wouldn't have pursued that arrangement. We would have just generally had one, as we were initially. So that's sort of my long-winded way of saying that we're at a point in history where we can no longer keep the team together, and because of that, we're sticking with GYL, and as a result of that, the town is going to have some financial benefits because, as I said before, the fee will be reduced from 25 basis points to 15 basis points. So it's unfortunate what happened. We don't know what happened. We may never know what happened, but the town, I think it's fair to say, and should be underscored, is in good hands. Our model of having separate investment advisors to review the investment managers is still in place. So.
Thanks, Jim, for that update. And I'd also like to mention, just to thank Rob DeLuca and Charlie Andriel for their years of service before the board. With that, any questions from the board on that? Or I think Jim helped provide that succinct overview. So thanks, Jim. Item number 4 is to hear a presentation of GYL financial synergies. Michael, would you like to come up? With regards to the performance of the town police pension fund for the quarter, June 30th, 2023, and also we're going to cover, actually for all of these, the quarter ending September 30th of 2023, because we have updated information. So we're going to go for item number 4 is the police pension, and item number 5 is the volunteer fire. Item number 6 is the other post-employment benefits, and item number 7 is the coastal resiliency fund. Michael, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you all, and thank you for having us. As the finance director and the chair alluded to, it's been a long time we've been working with you all, and we certainly appreciate the continued confidence that you've placed in our organization. We know there have been changes over the past couple of months, and so we're certainly pleased to continue to work with the town, and also we're happy to be able to provide some cost compression for the plans as well.
Thank you, Michael. So
what I'm going to do is, today you have just me. What we're gonna have someone come and fill second chair, so to speak, going forward. So at the November meeting, Jerry Goldberg, who most of you have met, will be here, and I'm also going to introduce you to a gentleman named Matt Pranatis, who's one of our colleagues who will kind of normally take second seat. Matt's a chartered financial analyst, or has the CFA designation, and has a lot of experience working with organizations such as this. So I think you'll enjoy working with him, and of course I'll continue to be here at the quarterly meetings as well. So a little bit, of course, historically, either Rob or Charlie has provided the market overview, and I've gone through the performance, so I'll have the honor of doing both today. We follow a fairly similar approach to the way Hightower had done the market overview, but what we typically do is develop an acronym each quarter that kind of addresses what we think are the important points in the market, and the acronym that we came up with for this quarter is STRAIN, S-T-R-A-I-N. And so, which is a bit ironic given all the geopolitical uncertainty in the world, but starting with the S is for strategic asset allocation, and this is really, has been one of the secret sauces, if you will, to Branford's success, and that is, develop a long-term strategic asset allocation consistent with your goals and objectives, and stick to it, essentially, recognizing that there will be ups and downs in the market and that we model these. But like so many other times, when you try and invest by the news or invest by the headlines, invariably the market kind of whipsaws you. And so we think, especially given the amount of volatility that we've seen thus far this year, whether it be with interest rates, whether it be geopolitics, or whether it be politics here at home, that we have to remember this is why we developed our long-term allocation. This is why we have a portion of the bond portfolio matched to different liabilities, et cetera, to allow us to kind of ride out these ups and downs in the markets. The T in the acronym is for terrorism and despotism, and certainly whether it's what happened in Israel recently or what's been going on in the Ukraine for the past several years. It is, it's important to remember that we've had a nice run of relative peace, but we can't really kind of sit on our laurels, so to speak. And we think from an economic point of view, this is a reminder just how important defense spending, which of course is about 17% of our economy, just how important those things are, and we're likely to see a fair amount of tailwind from defense spending, which despite kind of the noise that we're hearing coming out of Capitol Hill, is certainly going to continue to be more and more important in the environment in which we're living. The R is for interest rates or rates. The Fed has, whether or not they have one more rate hike in them kind of remains to be seen, but the general consensus is that we are at or near the end of the rate hike cycle. We saw a bit of a market-driven rise in rates over the past several weeks. Primarily, that was kind of a supply-demand issue, but we do anticipate that we are, as I said, either at or near the end of the rate hike cycle. We did see relatively strong GDP in the third quarter. We're anticipating that will come down quite a bit in the fourth quarter, and that combined with the I in our acronym, I'm skipping over the A for a moment, which is inflation. We've started to see inflation really roll over. It peaked at 9.1% in June of 2022. It's down to 3.7% as of September. That's higher than a lot of people would like it to see, and it's certainly well above the magic 2% number that the Fed talks about so often. But we're definitely moving in the right direction in the market. When you look at what are called dot plots, that the Fed governors, how they kind of predict where rates are going, or whether you look at what the bond market's doing, there's definitely an expectation that inflation will continue to be reined in. I think the break-even inflation on the 10-year Treasury is somewhere around 2.5% now, just to kind of put in perspective as to what the market's predicting. I skipped over the A. We'll be real quick on that, but that's AI, or artificial intelligence. And I'm not going to talk too much about that, and we'll kind of, we can leave the sci-fi versus the productivity discussion, for holiday cocktail parties coming up. But I think big picture, it's important to recognize that AI is a tremendous potential productivity driver. And if you think about our economy, what drives the economy? It's population growth and productivity of that population. And we know that we are having fewer and fewer children. We're definitely less inclined to let, kind of up the immigration allowances. And so we're not really seeing a lot of population growth. And so how is our economy going to continue to grow? Mostly through gains in productivity. And so we feel that AI really is, has the potential for that. Some people are likening it to a, kind of a smartphone moment or a steam engine moment in terms of the long-term impact it can have on the economy. And it will remain to be seen, but certainly we think the productivity gains will be beneficial. Lastly, the N is for net profit margins, and I think it's it's noteworthy that profits generally this year have surprised to the upside. A little bit of touch and go in the third quarter. You probably or you may have seen Tesla and Google came in a little bit short of expectations, but on balance, corporations are still reasonably profitable. The consumer is still quite strong, although they are spending down those excess COVID savings, and so really we'll kind of have to see how things come in the new year, whether or not we have just a slowdown in profits or sort of what's commonly called to as an earnings recession, or whether that spills over into the broader economy and we really see the consumer retrench, and which has the potential to create some negative returns and a potential recession in the broader economy. So on balance, we're neutral pretty much on the economy. We think rates are probably near their peak, and it presents an interesting opportunity for bonds. But we'll see what happens going into 2024. I think the first half of 2024 in a lot of ways will be telling. I'll pause there for a moment, see if there's any questions.
Charlie?
I think I disagree with you, though. Population growth with all the open borders that we have and the millions that we have coming in undocumented?
Yeah. No, I mean, I certainly, I can't disagree with that, and I know there's more and more, we're seeing, I think Venezuela is, just kind of surpassed as one of the number one sources, but there's a difference between, illegal immigration and legal immigration, and that's,
Okay, it doesn't seem to,
yeah, so, understood. So thank you for making that observation. So with that, we can turn to performance. You have the deck with you. If everyone would like to turn, please, to tab 2. We'll start with the police pension, and I will start on page 5 of tab 2. And we can see on the top left-hand side the growth of a dollar chart. Much as we would expect with a predominantly passive investment methodology that we really tracked along with the benchmark quite closely. More recently, you can see there's a little bit of relative underperformance owing to the fact that although that's been a bit of the excess cash has been a bit of a tailwind in the past 4 months or so, it certainly created a bit of a headwind for the first half of the year. But on balance, our annualized return since inception is at 5.23%, really spot on with the benchmark, which was at 5.27%. That return has come with about 7% less risk. That's your beta statistic at 0.93. And so that translates into an alpha or value added on the positive side of 0 at 3 basis points. You'll also notice, we don't talk about this a lot, but you'll notice beneath the alpha, the Sharpe ratio. Sharpe ratio is a measure of risk-adjusted return. What it essentially does is it takes your return, subtracts what you could have gotten without taking any risk, and divides it by the volatility. And so what that means in English, basically, is a higher Sharpe ratio indicates that you've gotten more return for the amount of risk that you've taken versus a benchmark. And so you can see the Sharpe ratio at 48 versus 46 to the benchmark is on the positive side of where we'd like it to be. In dollars and cents at the bottom right, we can see the inception value in 4/1/03 was at $8.3 million. Since that time, there's been about $240,000 in net positive cash flows. That's a net number. In other words, cash contributions minus benefit payments. And so essentially what this is saying is that the cash contributions have more or less met or slightly exceeded the benefit payments over the past 20 years. And then the market has provided $19.14 million in earnings, bringing us to a value of $27.7 million at the end of September. We did review the asset allocation with the finance director last week, as we always do, and don't recommend any rebalancing for this evening. One of the things that we're going to talk about in a few moments is we would like to embark on a project with the finance director, with your bond manager, as well as your actuary, and we started to have some conversations about this. But we think it's an interesting opportunity with bond yields having come up as much as they have to potentially lengthen the duration of the bond portfolio and have it more closely match that of your liabilities. For a long time, we've matched some of the liabilities, and as interest rates have come down, it's become harder and harder to do that because you're getting paid less on bonds. And now all of a sudden, bond yields are more than twice what they were just 18 or 24 months ago. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to potentially lengthen out that and match more of your liabilities. Just to kind of put it in perspective, the duration of your bond portfolio is, and this is in your report, it's on page 15, is about 5.8 years. The duration of your total liabilities is about 14 years. That's because you have, of course, it's an open pension, so you're adding folks to the liability stream, regularly, and just the nature of the underlying pension. So there is room to adjust. There's one more comment I wanted to make on page 15 real quickly, and that's about, we've seen negative returns in bonds for the past several years. And it's a bit unusual. 2022, of course, we were negative with both stocks and bonds. We're kind of at a period in 2023 now where yields are high enough so that even though we've seen bond prices come down a little bit, the interest is more than offset that. But if we just look on page 15 at kind of, it's really kind of a small page here, but just look at on the far right in the bold, you see par value 9.922. That's $9,922,000 in maturity value or par value of the bonds. See in the bottom left, it says 9,922.
Oh, yes.
Page 15?
Yes, got it.
Okay. So in other words, what that's saying is that's the par value. So $9.92 million is the face value of all the bonds in the bond portfolio.
Yep.
Okay. If you look a bit over about 4 or 5 rows to the market value, you see 9.05.
Yeah.
Okay? So what that's saying essentially is there's about $900,000 in accumulation that will occur as these bonds move towards their par value. And so the point is that, as a pension fund, even though it's painful and uncomfortable to see the decline in the bond value, because you own individual bonds with fixed maturity dates and fixed maturity pricing, in a lot of ways we can think of that as sort of a snapshot in time. And as long as you're not liquidating the bond portfolio into weakness, we'll see kind of a natural recovery of some of that as the bonds move towards maturity. Okay. Great.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Questions?
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to tab 3 is the OPEB. And page 6, we can focus on the same numbers. We'll see we have an annualized return at 4.74, slightly behind the benchmark at 4.88, owing really to the excess cash. The OPEB, of course, has a significant amount of cash in it with the T-bill investments, and our volatility or beta has been 0.86 or 14% less than the benchmark. And so much like in the pension, that produces a positive alpha or value added, as well as a Sharpe ratio or risk-adjusted return in excess of that of the underlying benchmark. Since inception, the beginning value on July 1st, 2011 was $4 million. Since that time, net inflows of $24.8 million, and the market has earned about $8.2 million, bringing us to the just over $37 million that we see at the end of September. If we move back a couple of pages to page 3, I want to focus specifically on two, kind of the light gray or light blue rows. If you look 2 up from the bottom where it says Treasury bills, that $8.56 million, that's from the large cash deposit that was made a couple of years ago, and we've invested that in Treasury bills to try and gain some additional return with the idea of dollar cost averaging that money into the OPEB over a period of about 7 years. We've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. We put 1/14 in every 6 months. Much like the pension, and you can even make a stronger argument for it, but we're looking at the duration of the bond portfolio. Your OPEB is very well funded. You're more than 100% funded in the OPEB, which puts you in very rare company. But again, with interest rates as low as they were when the large deposit was made, it made a lot of sense to embark on this dollar cost averaging process. We think with rates as high as they are now, it may make some sense to redeploy some of those T-bill assets into fixed income and increase the overall fixed income allocation to the OPEB. It's an opportunity. We don't think that rates will stay elevated indefinitely, and it's an interesting opportunity to more closely match some of your liabilities, and quite frankly, you can afford to, because the fund is it's overfunded by as much as it is, and so that essentially means we can take on less risk. So that's something that we'll be discussing with the finance director, your bond manager, and your actuary, and intend to report back to you at the November Board of Finance meeting.
So you would extend that effective duration beyond the 3.6?
Correct.
Is what you're saying?
Exactly. And the logic behind it essentially is if you're fully funded, you have, you can, if interest rates go up, the present values of your liabilities come down because you're discounting them at a higher rate. And so, but the idea is if the duration of your assets and the duration of your liabilities are the same, if you get an uptick in interest rates, it drives down the value of your bonds, but it also drives down the value of your future liabilities. So the idea is that these things move in sync, and it creates less uncertainty as far as funding. Okay. Now, for a municipality, it's a little more nuanced than that because you set your own discount rate, but it is, make no mistake about it, the actual value of your liabilities changes with interest rates. So I think it's an interesting opportunity that that merits consideration because it is a way to de-risk or certainly reduce the risk quotient for these pools of assets.
Thanks, Mike.
So,
questions on this?
So similarly, no recommendation to rebalance the OPEB at this point. Okay.
And Michael, I just want to know, what would you do though with any decision you make, wouldn't that be, wouldn't you have to consider the outcome of the election in those decisions?
I mean, it's a great question. I think, one thing, I mean, certainly the local elections will have occurred before this is presented to the Board of Finance. As far as the national election, there's different views on that. I think historically, historically markets tend to move, in spite of the president, not because of the president, whomever the president is. But it is, and very often, probably, one of the easiest examples is look at the different sectors of the equity market. One of the worst performing sectors of the equity market under President Trump was energy. One of the best performing sectors of the equity markets under President Biden is energy. And you probably, if you know their energy policies, you kind of think it would be the exact opposite of that. So I think it's noteworthy. It's something to be aware of, but the market will, the interest rates will move based more on the economy, I think, than who's in office. But these are certain things that, we'll certainly hash out. We're not going to make any changes without reviewing them with the Board of Finance ahead of time.
Yeah, thanks. Fine.
Okay, great. So with that, let's move on to the volunteer fire. Tab 4, page 5. Very similar to the pension, just a shorter history because this pool of assets was split out from the water pension in 2015. But the annualized return at 4.55, again, because of the relative overweight to cash, in the policy that the town has of kind of setting aside about 10 months worth of benefit payments in cash, it's led to a little bit of a drag on relative performance. When we adjust for risk, we're still consistent with the underlying benchmark, although you can see the alpha here is 0. The reason for that is essentially we're 100% passive here because of the assets that are relatively small. We have the fixed income is not in a separate account; it's in an index fund. So it's a little bit slightly different implementation, but the underlying experience and the overall asset allocation is substantially similar to that of the police pension. In dollars and cents, at the bottom of page 5, we transitioned 56,000 over. There's been about 1.1 million in positive cash flow and $370,000 approximately in earnings, bringing us to 1.55 million at the end of the quarter. This portfolio, we will not be going through the same exercise because of its relative size, and 2, simply because we have that index fund, so we can't really customize the bond portfolio with the amount of dollars that we have. Okay. And then lastly, tab 5, the Coastal Resiliency Fund. Page 4. Since inception, the annualized return here, unfortunately, is negative, owing to the fact it's a bond-centric portfolio that was invested in October of 2021 before we saw rates spike. On a relative basis, we've had less negativity than that of your benchmark, but it's still a negative number, minus 2.64, ahead of the benchmark, which was minus 3.54, and that has come with about 13% less volatility. But as you see in the bottom on the bottom right, beginning market value of 1.925, inflows of 528,000, but then market losses of 102, almost 103,000 since that time, bringing us to the 2,350,000. Much like the pension and the OPEB, the silver lining, if you will, to that is that we do have a separately managed bond account for the Coastal Resiliency Fund as well. So if you turn to page 9 of tab 5, you'll see the roster of the bond investments, and much like the pension, you can see at the very bottom left, the face value of all these bonds is $1,692,000. The market value, $1,571,000. So we have, again, about $120,000 or so in kind of growth we'll get back to as the bonds mature.
Well, what was the reason again, though, for the negative performance?
It's really it's a timing matter as much as anything. We invested the first sleeve in the Coastal Resiliency Fund was invested in October of 2021, and by statute, this has to have a heavy allocation to fixed income. So we got really all of the brunt of the downturn in fixed income in 2022, combined with what was a weak equity market. Now, the equity markets have since rebounded, the weakness over the past quarter or so notwithstanding, but that the primary driver of that is the fixed income market, and that is, by Connecticut state statute, we have 65% of the portfolio in fixed income. Over time, that should mute the volatility, but 2022, unfortunately, there was nowhere to hide.
Okay.
So just to close the loop, no recommendation to rebalance any of the portfolios, and I plan on working with the finance director, your actuary, and your bond manager over the next month, and reporting back to you on some ideas. Just with regards to the bond portfolio, not a substantive change, but I think we have some opportunities that we can reduce the risk quotient a little bit.
Okay, questions from Michael on this? Okay, appreciate the presentation. Thank you for
Thank
coming,
you.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
We'll
Okay.
see you next time.
Have a good evening, all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 8 is to consider if appropriate approve the following transfer for planning and zoning for fiscal '23 from overtime, $1,275, moving into advertising, printing, and binding, $1,275. Welcome, John.
John.
Hi, John.
Harry. How are you?
Hi, Victor. How are you?
Good. Hey, sorry about that. How's it going?
This is Evan Brining, assistant planners with me
Sure.
tonight. This is pretty straightforward, just went over the budget for the account due to advertising costs for applications. I bumped up the budget for the current fiscal year we're in, about maybe to split the difference, really, thinking I just don't know if it's gonna be that high. Again, because I don't want to over budget, but
What's your budget for the current year?
45,
Okay, so you should be okay, hopefully, for
yeah,
that.
hopefully, yeah.
But you have a lot of action, that's a good thing.
There's a lot of action, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully it comes to fruition with construction.
Yeah, good. Questions from Harry?
I'll move it. Second.
Motion made and second, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Harry?
All right,
Good night.
thanks, folks.
Hey, Harry. Say Harry.
Take care.
Take care. Next is item number 9, to consider and if appropriate, approve the following transfer from the tax collector for fiscal '23 from regular wages and salaries, $439, from purchase, repair, and maintenance, $300, online services, $780, advertising, $2,513, state fees, $350, memberships, $279, contingency, $962, for a total of $5,623, transferring into tax bill processing, $4,142, postage of $1,068, and office supplies of $413. Jim, contingency balance on fiscal '23?
Yes, it's 307,439.
That's after any transfers tonight?
Correct.
Thank you. Welcome, Robert.
Good evening. In fiscal year 2022-23, a second installment billing was implemented to assist the collection of taxes for January 23 billings. Additionally, by creating this billing, it created an awareness of taxes due in 2023. In turn, it increased the velocity of on-time payments collected. This procedure caused a shortfall of $5,209.88 within the postage and billing processing budget. Next was the purchase of validator ribbons and validator paper rolls, which caused a shortfall in the supply budget of $413.40. These printers and paper are used for our walk-in and mail payments. Any questions on any of these transfers?
Questions from the board?
move it, Joe.
Questions?
No questions.
The only question I have is, what is your estimated percentage for fiscal '23?
23, 24?
For a year that it was ended in '23, which this applies to?
I'm sorry, the percentage of collection, Joe?
Percentage of collection?
99.20.
99.2? Thanks. All right,
What are we projected, Joe?
a little less than that. So, okay, any additional questions?
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved and seconded, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, Robert, thank you. Keep up the good work. Number 10 is to consider and if appropriate approve the following transfer request and resolution from the Human Resources for fiscal '24 pursuant to the RTM approved collective bargaining for Public Works from contingency $35,145 into wages and salaries $3,246, overtime at $976. Regular wages for Public Works was $22,904. Overtime for Public Works was $2,409. Regular wages and salaries for solid waste, $4,598, and overtime for solid waste and recycling, $1,012 for a total of $35,145. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Any update on anything you'd like to get involved with or inform us about the contract?
Sure. This is the Teamsters contract with Public Works, as you were talking about, Joe. We did this very expeditiously. It didn't take us too long. No mediation was involved. And this 2.25% increase is an increase over budget, over current budget. We also changed the budget slightly to, there was no additional cost to the budget, but we did move some of our labor truck driver positions, which are our entry-level positions, to truck operator 1 positions. I'm very pleased about that because we did that all internally with our own skilled labor through the training that our Director of Public Works did with them. And secondly, I think what's important to note is that this budget, I think, going forward is another 2.25% increase next year. And then in July 1st of 2025, at 2.5%, and July 1st of 2026 holding at 2.25%. So I think this met our management goals.
Thank you. Questions on this transfer?
Margaret, are these always 4-year budget programs or 3 years?
Up for a contract?
Yeah.
It varies from union to union, but we increase this to 4 years,
Okay, what did we have last time? Was it 3 years?
3 years.
Yeah, okay.
We were better positioned this year, we feel, at the 2.25% increase over the last year to come in.
Yeah, that's good, good.
Mhm.
Okay, for consideration, resolve that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM a transfer from a contingency of $35,145 to the notes accounted to fund compensation changes pursuant to the recently approved Public Works Collective Bargaining Agreement for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
I'll move its approval.
I'll second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Great.
you. Thanks, Margaret.
Thank
Thanks,
you all very
Pam.
much.
Okay. Item number 11 is to consider and if appropriate approve following transfer and resolution from the Director of Information Technology, fund balance transfer increase for ARPA funding of $30,000 and in order to fund in order to fund technology acquisitions for the phone system. Welcome, Debbie.
Good evening. So basically, I was going to wait until next fiscal year budget to update the phone system over at the police, but because they might have to temporarily move with the building renovation in the spring, I was looking for funding to do it in advance so we could get the phone system in place before they move, and moving them from the type of system they have now to a VoIP system. They'll be able to take their phones with them wherever it is they will temporarily move. So after speaking with the finance director and the first selectman, they had suggested that we supplement the funding from the ARPA fund.
And what's the total? This is the total cost of the project?
From the ARPA fund, $30,000.
And the total project is?
25,027, but that's estimated right now.
Okay.
They're always, with technology, there's always changes.
Right, right. So the 30,000 gives you
A little room.
a little bit of a contingency
Yeah.
as well. And questions from the board?
There's a yearly maintenance, or the, like of 9,000,
Yes.
which is a little high, I think.
Well, what that is, that's for hosting, and that's for all the voice minutes, it's for everything. Actually, we'll be saving compared to what we pay today for our POTS lines and Centrix lines.
And what do you do for backup on something like this?
It's all backed up in the cloud, so there's 2 levels of backup.
Okay.
So there's backup by the vendor, and there's backup by us, so 2 levels.
Right, so as long as you have internet service.
As long as you have internet service, but again, this is for the phones that are sitting on desks and not necessarily for the phones that are in dispatch. Dispatch will always have an element of POTS lines
Okay,
in case the internet goes down.
right, right.
But we also have 4 levels of backup of internet, so.
Right, right. Okay, the best we could do. So for consideration here, resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an increase in the cumulative ARPA fund appropriation from $6,572,000 to $6,602,000. This appropriation will be used to fund the purchase and installation of new phone system for the police department.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
I'll second.
second by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I just,
Charlie, you had a question?
yeah, and Jim, are we using the ARPA funds correctly here?
think the answer is yes on that one.
I know, but I just wanted to bring it out again.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. Just kind of go back a little bit. The ARPA fund, if you receive less than $10 million, you take what's called a standard allowance. And the standard allowance allows you to spend money on what they deem to be government services. And so when you look at the definition of government services, it's vastly similar to what you might find in our operating budget or in our pay-as-you-go capital budget. And so, and remember, the ARPA funds have to be basically expended by December of 26. So the thought is to basically, instead of waiting, as Debbie said, till next year's budget, to take a small amount out of ARPA now, as opposed to, say, fund balance, which we have another item on the agenda for fund balance for the police pension. And we didn't really want to hit contingency either because there's still some other contracts that need to be settled and it's still only fall and, we don't know what kind of window.
You okay?
Yeah, no, I just want to be sure we're following protocol.
Okay, item number 12 is to hear a presentation from the fire chief regarding staffing and facility plan for the fire services. Welcome, Chief, and welcome committee members.
Thank you. I have with me Chairman of the Board, Bob Massey, and Commissioner David LaCroix, and my Assistant Chief, Brian Kozak's with us tonight. Thank you for hearing our presentation tonight, and thank you for indulging us with the different setup here. And it's different than what you're used to. We're going to go through this relatively quickly so we can have time for problems or questions and not take up too much of your time. You've all had the opportunity to look through the plan. I distributed it to the board several months ago along with most of the elected officials. It is posted on the fire department webs page on the Town of Branford website. If you go to Branford, townofbranford.com, you'll be able to find it under Public Safety Fire Department, and there is a link to this web page that also contains a PDF version of this plan. So simply, we're looking at 4 problems. Number one is a decline in the number of our volunteer firefighters. This is kind of a long, slow, painful process that we've gone through. We've tried to work in many ways possible, to stem the loss of volunteers, to attract new volunteers. There are many reasons for the decline in the volunteers, but the truth is that we are seeing a significant decline to the point of unreliability. Couple that with an increase in calls for service. Our call volume has increased significantly, as you'll see a little bit further on. We had a slight dip in call volume. We were getting very busy prior to COVID. We had a slight dip during COVID in mostly our EMS-related calls. And since COVID ended, we have seen a very significant increase in call volume, and it doesn't seem to want to end. It stresses our resources every day, and pretty much every day, multiple times a day, we're at zero status, meaning there's no staffed units ready to go. This is going to be compounded by the recent development. We have many apartment buildings being built. You've all seen them throughout the town. They are not yet occupied, so they aren't impacting service yet, but they will, as will any future development. So related to all this is with the decline in our district volunteer houses, which are spread out through the community, all of our eggs currently reside in this one basket at fire headquarters, and that creates an inequity of service throughout the town. We really do strive for a 4-minute response. 4 minutes is a benchmark for medicals, and it is the standard to get the first arriving fire engine on scene for any fire that may happen. Brian, if you could go on. So just to quickly talk a little bit about the volunteers. We have awesome volunteers. These people struggle to get this job done, but they're just down in sheer numbers. It's all a numbers game for volunteers. When I first started here in 1995, we had 7 volunteer companies. Each company had approximately 30 active volunteers. Today we have 4 volunteer companies, and we have a total of 43 volunteers. That includes fire police, cadets, members, The actual number of interior or fully certified firefighters is at 27. Divide that number between the 4 companies and then who can respond right now. It creates a situation that is really very unreliable. Between the hours of 5:30 and 10 at night, we get a pretty good response from the companies. And they have worked very hard to support each other, help each other, consolidate. But it's unfortunately not going to be enough as we move into the future. As you can see, they've been dispatched to less calls than we had because we started taking them off medicals during COVID. And even by taking them off those calls, there's the calls to which they are called for, they are getting out less and less each year, as you can see from the line on the graph. And this is a nationwide problem. This isn't just isolated to Branford. I started my career as a volunteer in Madison, as you all know. And, when we had a house fire, your average ranch, we might call mutual aid to cover a station. Now, if they have a fire, there's 5-town mutual aid just to get the job done. Again, it's a time of day. Sometimes it's a robust response, and they're struggling too. But over time, they're going to face the same shortages as we are in Branford. The next problem is our call volume. So this graph shows the call volume, and this is just till 2022. As you can see, after the COVID dip, it started to increase, it is currently, we finished our last fiscal year at 6,715 incident responses, we just ran the numbers from October of last year to October of this year, and we're over 7,000 calls.
7,316, we're up 7%.
Again, most of these are EMS related, but we are the EMS provider for the town. It is a service that is something that I think we all are proud of, it has worked well, but it's out of balance right now. So we're going to talk a little bit how we want to get back into balance and address some of these issues. This is a comparison of incident responses to our neighboring towns. As you can see, Branford is much busier than our surrounding communities. Guilford, for instance, has the same level of staffing as Branford. Well, it's a larger geographical, larger landmass geographically. They have the same amount of career personnel doing about half the work as our personnel. We are a community, as you know, of over 28,000 in just 22 square miles, and that makes our population density the urban definition of population density is over 1,000 per square mile. Branford's almost at 1,300. So, you put more people in a smaller area, you create more problems. Again, older community, the types of development, businesses, housing that we have here all contributes to our problem. So, that's what's driving the calls. Certainly, we work very hard to put ourselves out of business on the fire end, but the fire department has evolved into more of an all hazards department. We are the department they call when they don't know who else to call, and a lot of these are service related, but again, an elderly person is down at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going to go and help that person. So those are some of the driver of all of these incidents. They're not all major incidents. But the key is when you do have a major incident, you need people here ready to go. And we're not here ready to go. We're often out at that. I like to say, when you call 911, you don't want us at your neighbor's house. You want us ready to go waiting for your call. And if we're busy helping your neighbors, we're not going to be here for you. And that's really where we are out of balance right now. Brian, if you could just go to the growth section. Again, I think we all know Branford still has room to grow, and it's been growing. While Health Tech Park or Med Tech Park or whatever it is on Sycamore Way is a concept right now that's kind of may or may not happen. Something will eventually happen out there. The proposed Metro Star at the old Atlantic Wire site across from the Armory. My understanding from Mr. Smith is it fully intends to move forward with that in 2025. They've settled their differences in court. And, you know, between that, the new Parkside, Mariners Landing, that area of town will become much busier for the Indian Neck Station, which, as we'll talk about in a little bit, is where our next staffing will go. With that, we're going to talk a little bit about the inequity of service that we're facing. So you need help in an emergency, you need it quickly, and so it's all about time. Whether it's a cardiac event, you really have about 4 minutes of lack of circulation to your brain and vital organs before you start to create an irreversible situation. So we want to be able to get there quickly in a medical emergency, and certainly a fire. Fires grow exponentially, and we have many areas of built up parts of town where a fire in one house could quickly spread to others if we don't get there and get it under control quickly. So as you can see, we've actually put some actual times here. So Stony Creek is, from headquarters, our longest response. It's over 12 minutes. Certain parts of Pine Orchard, Boston Park, those areas are, you know, you're getting into 8 minutes. And then, you know, only if you're around headquarters are you going to get that quick response. So the further out you are, the less, you know, we're able to get to you in a timely fashion. So how we plan to address this is to, you know, first this is the shaded area is the response from headquarters from 4 minutes. As we move to the next map, you'll see in Indian Neck, that's the 4-minute response. There is overlap between the two, which is what you want. We plan to staff Indian Neck first, and then in the second phase of our plan, we hope to build a station out on Acorn Drive. As we discussed at the previous meeting, there's town-owned property sufficiently sized to support a fire station. And our goal is a 4-minute response to 90% of the built-up area of town. So from these 3 stations, we would be able to respond to that 90%. The middle area that's kind of unshaded right now, a lot of that is the Tabor property, and then there's no roads, so the map's not going to pick up areas that don't have roads when New England Geo did the modeling for us. And this is also at road speed, so you know we go a little bit faster than road speed. So our response should cover the majority of town from these 3 stations, and that would be our goal. So that's essentially the summary of the problem. That you know, we have an increased call volume, a decrease in the resources available through our volunteer staffing. We have you know, the inequity of service and continued development that's pressuring all of it. So how are we asking you to address it? Well, we looked at the situation, and you know, Branford has a top-notch emergency medical service attached to the fire department. Currently, our ambulances are staffed by firefighter paramedics who go to 100% of the calls to which they're dispatched. Well, you don't need a paramedic on 100% of the calls. We have about 40% of our calls that only require an EMT level, not a paramedic level, and most medical calls of that nature don't need you know, the fire response. We higher level calls, depending on the call type, we will send extra resources. So we looked at it and we said, well, how about if we staff the transport ambulances with just EMTs? The difference in price, the way we looked at this, is we would pay them a very good market rate. They would get the same benefits as the firefighters, the same schedule as the firefighters, but their only duty would be EMS. And that would give, so we currently per shift have 4 of our personnel are on the ambulances. We would get those 4 firefighter paramedics back. We would staff the engine in Indian Neck with 3 of them. 1 we would keep up here as a floater to drive the ladder truck for now. The ambulances would then be staffed by EMTs. The difference in cost between the EMT as opposed to the staffing of the firefighter paramedics, would save about $700,000 a year. So over the life of, a 10-year period, we're talking $10 million savings. So the other thing is EMTs are much easier to find as far as staffing and finding employees. The paramedics are very hard to find. It's a significant difference in education and time investment all of the area fire departments have discovered our model and have been, we're now fishing, that's much smaller school of fishing than much larger pond now, so everybody's grabbing them up. So the EMT model would probably work much better for us. So in the first year, which we would intend to come this budget year, coming up fiscal 25, would be to ask for approximately $1,680,000. We budgeted this on the high end. This doesn't include any step increases or anything like that. We would fine tune those numbers. That does include all the benefit costs involved, at least as far as the numbers we have today. We did project some increase, but that to us is the worst case scenario. And that would give us the ability to hire those 16 additional people, staff those ambulances, immediately put those firefighter paramedics down at the Indian Neck Station. Right now we're staffing that. You've already completed kind of the phase one of the project by giving us that extra money this year to staff it during the daytime. And next year we would intend to staff it full-time. Moving forward, and at the same time, again, depending on, our hope would be that in fiscal 25 we could begin to fund the future fire station at Acorn Road, have that built, and then fiscal 26 come and ask to hire an additional 8 firefighter paramedics, pair them with that one floater. That would give us those 3 staffed engines that covered 90% of the town. In a nutshell, that's it. It's the complete increase from the project start would be $3,485,863. Brian, that includes that's the station as well, or just the
No, those are the operating
costs? Yeah,
costs.
that's just the operating costs, right?
That's just personnel costs.
That's just the personnel and benefit costs.
Not operating, just personnel.
Yeah, personnel and benefits. I will address an operating question because I know it's come up. I think, Charlie, you asked, and others, would we need to buy additional fire engines, additional equipment? Well, with the decrease in volunteers, there's that available equipment that we'd essentially just be taking over. So we don't see a large increase in additional capital costs moving forward as far as gear, radios, breathing apparatus. In fact, some of those costs may come down a little bit because we overstock some of those vehicles as it is. Commissioner?
Oh, I think everybody's heard my jingle. I turned 60 in another month, and the pay department started in the same time I was born, and we had one engine company, and 60 years later we have one paid engine company. And we may have increased it by 1 personnel on it, but there's, I think you guys all, there's times I wonder, I monitor everything on my phone at my house, who's going to respond to the next call. There's no one here to help us. So I don't want to scare the public, but I mean, this is why we're here we took this plan to give it to you, and I think they did a great job. This is not just the fire chief, this is the fire commission all working together as a joint effort here with the chief's office. I think the time has come. We appreciate, we just got that money to help us during the day, which is making a difference getting that second truck. When we can't staff it, we're trying to get to places in 4 minutes, or it's giving that backup engine company out there. But I think the time has come that we have to seriously look at, because the decline of the volunteers is down to 27 that can go into a fire, and that's if they show up. Nothing against the volunteers. I came from there. The chief has, a lot of our people have, but it's just a change of the times. So we appreciate your time to take and listen to us, but it's at the point where I think it's pretty serious.
Thanks, Commissioner. Could you touch a little bit on number 4, which is build a new fire station at the property owned on Acorn Road?
Sure. I'm actually going to let Commissioner Massey talk a little bit about how we arrived at that number.
Yeah, we took some averages lately on some buildings that have been built, fire stations in Connecticut, and since we own the land, we came up with a square foot cost, and we came up with a practical building. There's no frills to this building. It's a 3-bay building with like a little, I would call it a little gym area, Chief, and a little,
Just storage, washroom, a little,
Yeah.
so in Indian Neck Station's a 50 by 50, this would be like a 60 by 60 footprint.
Yeah.
Just a little bit bigger, and I think, what did we do, 450
yeah,
or
I think
425?
450 a square foot, and that would take care of the site work and everything.
And, okay. And how many square feet for that, Chief?
3,600 times 2 with the second floor.
Second floor, yeah.
Yeah, so 7,200 square feet.
Okay. And what size property is that out there?
It's about 1.5 acres, so it's about 3 times the size of the Indian Neck parcel. There are some wetlands, and there's some buffer of trees that, but I had the town engineer, assistant town engineer, Kevin, did a drawing for us, plotted it out on the property, made sure we were out of the setbacks, out of the wetlands, actually made the parking lot probably a little bit bigger than we would need it, and feels that we could fit the building on the parcel.
So, okay. And that's, site has been mitigated?
Yeah,
It has.
Okay.
it's clean.
It did have some remediation issues, and I did double check with engineering, and it has been cleared.
Okay.
The one thing that's really unique about this station is we can, go a lot of different ways through town here. We're not just held up to go one way. We can get on the Turnpike fast, go down to Stony Creek fast, go down the Pine Orchard fast. There's a lot of different avenues out of this station here with help.
The siting of the station was important to us, and it wasn't just, I kind of discovered this just by memory, saying, hey, whatever happened to that industrial property was out there, knowing that, one of the things that has been talked about in the past, this station's been talked about for more than 40 years, putting a station out east. But we didn't want to, take prime real estate off of a Route 1 parcel or somewhere like that. We knew we were going to kind of have to take what we could get. But as Commissioner Massey has said, from this, you can jump on 95, you can get the back way up to Flax Mill Road, which is another area where it takes us a while to get to usually, up Northford Road, Flax Mill, up that part of town. Certainly jump down to the middle school area, Damascus, and into Stony Creek, which again is our longest response time. And many areas of in Stony Creek are very tight and built up areas of wood frame property that, great group of volunteers down there. I want to make clear that we don't intend to get rid of any of the volunteers. We do plan a consolidation. Stony Creek and more than likely Engine Company 2 would be the 2 remaining companies.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Yeah, I got a couple on Acorn Road. Is it zoned all right now?
It is an industrial area, so
IG2.
yeah, I'm sure that it could support a
And
fire
zoning
station.
is okay?
Whether, they did, if I remember correctly, this did go before them
Before
as a
planning
kind
and
of
zoning.
conceptual.
It gets 824 review.
Yeah, it had an 824 review, which was, a requirement for their future appropriation. But we will, it'll still have to go through the process and approval, the regulatory process, wetlands and zoning. So as far as its site, I believe it's still required a site plan review, but it is something that the chief has brought to planning and zoning, and they didn't see an issue with it. But it will still go through the process.
It's going to need a public hearing?
Yeah,
I believe it will.
I believe it will, but so that'll be set. And again, this is just concept. This isn't
this isn't a project yet, it's a concept. So we'll still have to go through that.
How about traffic
process.
lights? Have to get the equipment out.
What was the question, Charlie?
We need
How about traffic
lights.
lights to get the equipment?
I don't think we'll need any traffic lighting here. The traffic light at Gould Lane and Leeds Island Road should be sufficient for us.
Right.
It's not a very highly traveled area, and, I'm sure one of the concerns of the neighborhood is hearing, sirens. We're not coming out blasting sirens. We get to Leeds Island Road, go through a red light. Obviously, we need our lights and our sirens going. But if there's a call in that area, they're going to hear those lights and siren probably longer as they're coming from headquarters to get there. So I think it's a good location. It covers a lot of bases for us. And when I found out that it was town-owned property and it had been remediated, I was really excited about it because, again, it saves us that cost of property acquisition and finding a sufficient location such as this that can meet all of our needs.
How about number 5, the SAFER grant?
So the SAFER grant is something that we can use when we hire firefighters to meet the standard. So in phase 2, after the station's built, when we would want to staff that, we would hope to apply for the SAFER grant, and I think we have a very compelling case to make to receive that. It's a grant. It's a competitive grant. It's not a guarantee. We would have to plan for the worst and hope for the best, as we did the last time. But we were successful the last time, and I feel strongly we could be successful again. So that would offset the impact over the 3 years of hiring these additional firefighters.
Listen, did you mention too that eventually Stony Creek would be kind of combined with the one on Acorn Road?
Well, Stony Creek would be a standalone volunteer company, and along with the other company too. We're all one department, so we operate. But what we're going to right now, our volunteers aren't just a backup to the career staff, and they are an integral part of our response plan on a daily basis. Having the career staff there alleviates that the problem that we're having now, where it's an unreliable response. Even if we do this plan and fully flesh it out, we still need those 2 companies to be available. When we have a working fire, when we have those days when we have a lot of those days where we're just getting hammered, we're still going to need them. Storm coverage, those types of things. But the fact is that they are they're just down in numbers, and we just don't see it turning around to the point where it's going to make a reliable response. And everything from just response time to the Thimble Islands to just sheer call volume right now. We just don't have enough help.
Other questions? Victor?
The competitive ambulance services, do they have EMTs or paramedics?
They have a combination of both. The commercial ambulance companies are having some of the same issues we are as far as staffing. There are there's a lot more utilization, and one of the things we didn't want to do is we have an awesome EMS service here, and we don't want to compromise that. We want to keep it in-house as much as possible, but we also know that one of the things the plan doesn't address is more transport ambulances. So what we've done already is work with one of our local providers, Access Nelson. They're one of the better providers. AMR is just too busy and too stretched thin. They won't even provide mutual aid to us anymore. But we did meet with Access Nelson. He feels very strongly that they could help us in our times of need, because what happens is we pass our problems to Guilford, we pass our problems to North Branford. So in those times where we might have a priority 2 call, where we don't have available ambulances, we'll utilize the commercial ambulance to cover those calls. In the future, places like Branford Hills Healthcare, that generates a lot of our call volume, and other healthcare provider where you have somebody on scene, if it's not an emergency call, we could pass those calls. What happens though is then we lose the revenue for those calls. So, we don't want to give too much of that up, because the revenue is a big offset to our operation to begin with. but it is something that I think we're going to have to look at more in the future, is some type of hybrid model when we need more transport capacity.
Charlie?
Joe?
Chief, on the Acorn Road again, you said it would be 3 bays. Would that be 2?
Actually, it would be 2 and 2 deep, so you could fit apparatus one behind the other. Right now, Indian Neck isn't quite big enough to put 2 fire trucks back to back.
Yeah.
The 60 by 60 footprint gives us that ability, but it would still only be 2 bays, but 4 deep.
Okay, would there, or, you said, would there be any ambulances?
Eventually, I would like to, because that's the other thing, is right now, all of our ambulances operate out of here. Eventually, I would like to move one of the ambulances out east into that station. So we'd have a fire engine and ambulance out there. It would be nice eventually to have a fire truck and an ambulance in each station. Right now, with the resources we had, if we were to follow that plan, that's exactly what we would do, is we would move another ambulance out to the east side.
And Charlie, you're probably going to ask about grants for that building. They've already reached out to us, knowing that this plan, when it kind of went out there,
Yeah.
that between Hartford and Washington, I think we can get some money. Some federal grants, yeah. Am I correct on that?
Well, we would hope to,
Yeah.
and I know
Well, I think
that our elected state representatives had already expressed that they would do everything in their power to help us with that. Again, I never want to say this is a definite. A SAFER grant's not a definite. It's a competitive grant. We still have to apply for it and get it. Do I feel good about the chances? I do, but it's not a guarantee.
Sure. Jeff, you had a question?
Yeah, a couple. So, nice report, Chief and Commissioners. Item number 1's already been implemented, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
And then in the report, you talk about reciprocal agreements with East Haven, something that's formal. Do we have other agreements with North Branford to the north of us and Guilford to the east?
Yeah, so there's 2 types of mutual aid. We have mutual aid agreements with all 3 of our touching communities. The additional agreement we have with East Haven currently is an automatic aid agreement, where on the report of a fire in somebody's house, it has to be a structure fire. If we have a report of a structure fire, we're sending an engine company to them immediately, just like it was in our own town. They're doing the same thing on the west end of town. So everything from essentially the railroad bridge here at the West Rotary to the East Haven line, they're sending a response to us. That's helped us with the situation down in Short Beach right now, where we don't have that's our worst performing engine right now. It's essentially at 0. It just doesn't get out.
Is that engine shut down right now?
It's not officially shut down, but it just doesn't get out. To the members of Company 2 and the few remaining members of there's only three members. The 2 of those companies have worked to try to get both those engines out, but it's just.
We've been using it as a backup, though. If you see it going around racing through town Ford, we've been using that just when the truck's getting ready.
And what happens if Branford has a fire, and what we call a working fire, something that's going to take some time to control and put people in the house to put the fire out. Guilford comes over as our rapid intervention chain, so they're the standby rescue team in case one of us gets in trouble. That's been the standard of care since 1996 when we lost Eddie Ramos. So they come over, and we can also utilize any additional personnel as mutual aid. And then if it's on that side of town, East Haven's coming as well. But a lot of that's, we want to get the resources there as quickly as we can, so they're able to get to that east side, that west side of town quicker. Considering right now we don't have any additional career personnel.
How does North Branford help out when they're predominantly volunteer?
North Branford will come, do station coverage for us. They will, if we call them, they will try to get a crew and send it. It's one of the problems that we have with East Haven right now, because we're asking them to provide automatic aid to us. We have to provide that same aid to them. So we're sending pretty much our only career engine when that happens, and taking people off other apparatus to staff, for instance, Engine 7. We still call in any available volunteers, but sometimes we have to go through all 4 companies to even get one to respond. So.
Is East Haven busier than us?
I would not say that East Haven's busier than us. They have a larger population, but they're already using that kind of hybrid commercial model. So about 1,200 additional calls are being handled by the
AMR.
Yeah, so AMR goes directly to their nursing homes, directly to any, if you have a intoxication issue or somebody's going to get sent to the hospital for detox, drugs, that kind of thing. It's not an emergent call. The commercial ambulance, they don't even send a fire department first responder to those types of calls.
Well, East Haven doesn't transport either, right?
They don't, no. They do some bundle billing, but it's just at significantly less money than, we're bringing in, I think after the audit this year, we'll probably looking at 2.4 million, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you for your time.
Other questions? Harry?
Comment.
Sure.
In your handout this evening is what I think is going to be very helpful for getting this whole project approved, because this is a major dynamic project for the town.
It's a big project.
Is the word urban. Many citizens look at Branford, and it is a very nice residential town, but it's no longer a in-the-woods town. You've got industrial, you've got Route 1, got to deal with 95, and
the water.
Pardon?
And we take care of the water.
In water, sewers, and a lot of other things. But to where we are and what you folks have done over the years is, I'm not being religious, but nothing short of a miracle. Because as this industrial growth comes along, and a lot more is in the biotech. That could be a lab accident. You could have some major problems that are different other than fire, but it's the fire department they're going to call. And running one firehouse in a town of, 27,000 people right now?
28.
28. And looking at the proposed 3,000 in residential development, I'm not being dramatic, it's an accident waiting to happen. So I look forward to entertaining your project, which is the first start, and I assume you'll be following it up around the budget time regarding the physical plant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Harry. So you have Harry's vote.
Does it sound that way?
Pam, Pam, do you have questions?
No questions, no thanks.
Thanks, Pam.
It's a great presentation, and we will be addressing it at the budget time, and a lot of hard work has gone into this, and much appreciated, very detailed.
I appreciate that. We did want to get ahead of it. As you know, the budget season gets very hectic, and there's not a lot of time for this type of presentation. So thank you for the opportunity.
Jamie, comments?
No, I think the chief and assistant chief did a great job putting this report together with a lot of information that, we've heard a lot of stories, we hear, a lot of anecdotal evidence, but to have the data right in front of us is very important. And I appreciate them putting this together and reviewing it further, working with Jim and the finance department and the board, and really evaluating and laying out a strategy to, as I said, we want to meet the needs in our community, but Branford's strength has always been taking a prudent approach and a strategic approach to try to minimize the impact in terms of the burden on the taxpayer. So, look forward to continuing to work with the department as we move this forward.
And much appreciated. And this gives the finance department, I know Jim and myself and Jamie have talked a fair amount about this, and we'll be addressing it more at the budget time. And Jim is obviously, he's our crackerjack finance person, and looking at the debts, the debt services, and all the other projects that are out there. There's many projects that are on the books potentially, and this is an important one. and much appreciated.
I want to thank Jim too, because, he knocked us down a couple times, but we come back fighting, but thank you. And hope we gave you everything you want though, but, we appreciate your guidance.
He's still working on his magic sauce.
Yeah, he's still
there,
doing
but,
good.
Jim, any comments? I know you put this into at least conceptually into some of the other numbers that we're looking at.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is, tonight we heard about the fire, but as the Board of Finance knows from their, meeting an executive session with the Board of Ed, there are a lot of competing demands for dollars. And I think when you look out over the horizon, it's really, where does Branford want to go as a community? What do they want to basically fund? What are their priorities? And there are a lot of them. We have a study for the police headquarters, that's going to be coming to fruition, the field study, resiliency projects at the treatment plant. But, we have a lot of assets as well, right? We have a strong fund balance, we have a good bond rating, we have well-funded sinking funds, well-funded liability funds. We do have a pension liability, which we talked about earlier tonight. And also, we have physical assets that aren't necessarily being used, and that could be a potential source. In addition, as was pointed out multiple times, grant dollars, whether it's through state or local, and we did meet with our state reps as well on this. And, our state senator also represents Guilford, and, a station out east, in terms of the overall coverage between the various towns can also get to Guilford too if there is a event that requires it. So we're doing what we can to try to model this. No model is perfect. You can model it, but you still have to live it, and we have to live it each year through the budget process. And so hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have a better sense as to what this could look like or might look like.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
We'll see you again. Take care. Okay, item number 13 is to consider and, if appropriate, authorize the following proposed resolution. Resolution authorizing an appropriation of $1,100,000 for the fleet fueling station and financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in the amount not to exceed $1,100,000, and to recommend the resolution for adoption to the representative town meeting. And Jim, can you provide the overview of this? This is for the fueling station at Fire.
Yeah, actually, John will describe the project, but I know it's been some months, but this was part of the town's overall capital plan, whereby I think the plan was probably about $1 million. We built in a little bit for increased cost for $1.1 million, because in our capital plan we had this listed as debt. One of the things I should underscore, because it's come up and it's a good question, is, well, given some of the other assets we have, would we basically always have to bond for this? And the answer is no, but the bond resolutions do two things. One, it's an appropriation, so that's the authority to spend. And two, it's the authority to borrow. And it gives the town options. You may recall some years ago, we had a bond authorization for Station 9. And we ended up, through a variety of things, ended up paying cash for that. So kind of healing off on some of my earlier comments with regard to the fire plan, the next couple of years are going to be tricky. There'll be a lot of opportunities and ways to sort of, we were a private company, allocate capital, right? So where should dollars go for the best use? And by doing a bond authorization, it does give us that flexibility. The police headquarters is planned. It still has to come back to the board with a full appropriation to be renovated. And in doing so, this was going to probably happen anyway, but moving the fueling station to this building, and John can kind of tell you more about the elements of the projects, the logistics, and timing.
Thanks. Hi, John, how are you?
Very good. How about you guys? So this came up through the budget process, this project. But to kind of go through it again real quickly, we've got a current underground storage tank at the PD, reaching the end of its, I would say, permitted life. So 2025 it has to be out of the ground before we have a lot more restrictions on that. So we've been talking about this for a year or two, trying to get, find a place to put a permanent fleet fueling facility. We kind of looked at all the different facilities we had. Fire headquarters seemed to be a pretty logical place. Fire department, they said I can't remember how many miles they said they put on their engines to go fuel, I believe over at Public Works. So this would help them out. It kind of helps get the tank out of the ground at PD ahead of hopefully that potential project, and get a nice facility that everyone can kind of feel safe, lit, cameraed, both again diesel, gasoline, DEF, so the diesel exhaust fluid, everything new. Got all of our required permits through inland wetlands and planning and zoning, so this thing is ready to bid at this point.
This is the total estimated cost?
Correct.
And where is it going to be on the property?
Right beyond this wall, actually. So the back entrance that comes in through off of Cherry, right? It would be at the end of that entrance. We would expect everyone to come off of North Main to fuel up. There'd be enough of a turnaround so that we can get out. Nobody's going to be using where the apparatus come out for safety reasons. So it should be able to accommodate the whole fleet minus DPW. They have their own fueling at their place, and the wastewater treatment plant. They would be able to come here to fuel in emergencies during snowstorms, things like that they'd be able to fuel them.
Okay, questions on this?
John, I'm going to use the existing manpower here to staff it?
Yeah, so it's basically, we have 24/7 camera on the fuel pump. It's got all the safety features, so overflow protection, things like that, emergency stops. I don't want to say it's like a gas station, but that's essentially how it's kind of set up, where you don't, it's going to have an automatic card reader for people, as the fleet does have now, to either swipe a card or put their key fob up there, recognizes which department they're at, so we could track who's using what kind of fuel. You could set it so that you've got all sorts of options. You could say you're not allowed to have diesel, to make sure nobody accidentally fills their car with diesel, things like that. So,
are the tanks going to be above or below ground?
Tanks are above ground. The underground tanks are problematic with a lot of monitoring requirements.
Above ground, huh?
Yep.
Okay, and if I'd be happy to read this entire authorization, unless somebody wants to.
I'll recommend we waive it.
I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded to read the entire appropriation.
To waive the reading.
Waive the reading.
Waive the reading.
Yeah.
Not waive the appropriation. Motion's been made and clarified and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Penny? Good? Okay. All right, and so we have the authorization that I did previously read. Somebody want to move on?
I'll move it, Joe.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, John. Good luck on that one. And you're sticking around for
One more.
the next one, which is item number 14 is to consider and act on the following proposed resolution. Resolution authorizing the appropriation of $2,250,000 for the Supply Pond Bridge project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in the amount not to exceed $2,250,000 thereof, and to recommend the resolution for adoption by the representative town meeting. And again, I'd be happy to read this, but we want to waive this, the reading of the appropriation.
I'll move waiving of the reading.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. John, you want to go over the details of this, the Supply Pond Bridge project?
Sure. So again, this was brought through the budget process, but the supply ponds off of, it's technically Chestnut Street. There's a small bridge that crosses kind of the north and the south, bisects the supply ponds. That's a WPA bridge, so it's well past its life. We see the deterioration. It's not up to safety standards. Very narrow. Anyone who's ever driven over that bridge understands that it's very much an old bridge. So it's due for replacement. We had a structural engineer go out there and inspect it. Gave it I can't remember if it was a poor rating, but recommended replacement at this point. We did apply for and was granted a state local bridge grant for this, so it's a 50-50 grant. That grant was the amount of the original estimate was $2.08 million. However, again, we're looking at contingencies, and it may go up, as you guys are probably aware of the Harbor Street Bridge. We did have a lot of supplemental applications through that state local bridge program. As you start getting borings and figuring out more of the engineering of things, that may increase or decrease. But at this point, we're looking at the 2.25 as building in some contingency to that project.
So that's the total cost of the project at this point in time?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Questions?
I'll move it, Joe.
Been moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item number 15 is to consider and if appropriate approve the following transfer and resolution from the Finance Department for fiscal 2024. Increase appropriation the general fund by allocating $285,000 out of fund balance and authorizing that as an expenditure for the police pension contribution, police pension fund of $285,000. Jim, you want to go over this with us?
Sure. Two things. One, earlier in the night, you had asked what the balancing contingency was for 22-23, and it was about $307,000. And so what this does essentially offsets the impact of that flowing to fund balance. So when the 23 year closes, that $307,000 is going to go to fund balance. I didn't want to do a 23 transfer because I've already submitted data to our actuaries for their reporting, so it would basically create a snag there. And I've done this once before when this has happened, is basically do a corresponding appropriation out of fund balance in the new year, the year that we're currently in. So the two will basically offset each other once the year closes. And obviously, anytime you're putting extra money into a pension fund that's not fully funded, I think the last I looked, the police pension fund was probably in that 70% range. Every little bit basically helps. This is, reducing a liability, and you're doing so at a advantage of what the return on asset assumption is in the pension plan, which currently is 6.5%. So it seemed to make sense to do. So that's why I'm recommending that you guys act on that.
Thanks, Jim. Questions on this?
I'll move it.
Let me read this first. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the RTM an appropriation from undesignated fund balance the amount of $285,000. This transfer will increase the fiscal year 2024 general fund budget from $130,315,768 to $130,600,768 and will be used to fund police pension requirements. Victor?
I will move that resolution.
I'll second it.
Moved by Victor, seconded by Jeff. Is there discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks, Jim. And item number 16 is to consider a request from the Finance Director to recommend that the Board of Finance appoint the accounting firm of Clifton Larson Allen LLP to perform the annual audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023 at the proposed fee of $80,900. And Jim has provided a a memo and other backup. Jim, you want to go over this with us?
Sure. Basically, as in the past, Connecticut general statutes require the appointment of an auditor be done by a Board of Finance in towns that have a Board of Finance. This year was a little bit unique in that it became a two-step process because we received a proposal which was $80,900, and our local ordinances do not require bidding for audit services provided that they're below $75,000. So, we continue to see an increase in audit costs. I believe when the audit was presented for the 21 fiscal year, the partner had explained that, their labor costs have gone up because, they're competing with insurance companies to essentially, attract and retain talent. We did meet with the auditors talking about the 23 year. They understood that it was pursuant to your action. The prior partner that was assigned to the account has retired. We have a new partner. I've known her for a number of years, but not working directly in the field on Branford, although I understand she's been involved in some of the peer review work when she was also at Bloom Shapiro. I know one of the questions that the board is interested in is, well, when might we see the 22 audit and when might the 23 be done? So in anticipation of that, I'll broadly address those two items. The 22 audit, we believe we're in the home stretch now. When I was away the last couple of days, I got a good phone call from Catherine that she resolved a challenge that we had with the school system. So we think we're in a good position there. We're hoping to get some draft financials or at the end of this week, possibly early next week. And then I have to turn parts of that around, start with the management discussion and analysis. So we're hoping that by the end of November, we will have the 22 audit, maybe mid-December at the latest. There are certain aspects of it that would be then beyond our control. As far as the 23 goes, a lot of the challenges that we've talked about over the years still exist in terms of audit firms. There's not a lot of them, and there's turnover everywhere. There's turnover, not with the audit firms, although I think some of that has stopped now, but there's turnover also within the towns. And so there are a number of towns that are still trying to finish up their 22 audits, of which we are one of them. We feel that we're in a home stretch. So the reason I say that is because a lot of the audit firms now are trying to finish out their 23 engagements for fiscal year 23. So we would anticipate the auditors basically coming probably the end of January, maybe early February. We're shooting to have the final report by the end of May. And again, we know that that's running at the same time as our budget process, which obviously always presents challenges, but it's largely unavoidable. We are probably in the next week, we're going to get sort of a schedule. When we met with them, Catherine, myself, and the partner and the manager talked about a schedule. So when that's available, I can certainly share that. It's not something I have right now, but these were some of the goals that we talked about. We also have to take into account, to some extent, the Board of Education as well, in terms of what their timetable is. They know it. They know it's a priority as well. But we did get some things behind us over the past year or so. Catherine has successfully completed the upgrade of the financial system, and she and I implemented, you may recall, a different sort of budget presentment package, which hopefully we'll be posting on the website in another month. And that involved creating a lot of content, which was also going on. And so that's what our schedule is, and obviously we will be busy with other things as well, as you guessed from tonight's meeting and some of the other things we talked about. So
thanks,
it's going to be an interesting year. or so hang on.
So 22 will be wrapped up fairly shortly, is what we're planning on. And then the 2023 conceivably will be done by the end of May of 24. And then that would pretty much get us back on track for the 24, which technically is due in January 31st of 25, right?
December 31st.
It's December? Okay, so that's December of 24 is when, actually the 24 is due, 6 months after the close of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So this will get us back on track.
Yeah. We're trying to close those gaps.
Right.
And amortize them over.
Little by little, amortizing the
Yeah.
timeframes. Questions?
The gal that, or the CPA that wrote the joke, I look forward to seeing what she says here. She's going to develop innovative service techniques that will drive down the cost of providing such services to our clients. I'd like to know what those are when she does.
I think she's talking more on her end.
Huh?
She's talking on their end. Yeah.
Okay, other questions on this? Pam? You good?
No.
You're good?
Good.
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Pam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And item number 17, entertain a motion for adjournment with no... Motion's been made,
Second.
seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, good night. Thanks, Pam, take care.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.